and the co-host of Pro Football Talk Live, celebrating the 20th year of Pro Football Talk. He is Mike Florio, back on the program. All right, Mike, we knew that Beckham was going to be released. Now, can you explain the process here of him going to onto waivers, and then what happens after that?
Yeah, Dan, after the trade deadline, any player, no matter how many years in the league, must pass through waivers if released. If this had happened a week ago, he'd be able to go anywhere he wants. It happens now, he's got to go through waivers. And what I'm going to be curious to see is what they exactly did to his contract. The Browns wanted to reduce their financial obligation to him moving forward, but there's a sweet spot there, because if you make it too attractive, then one of these other teams says, we'll just claim the contract on waivers. Beckham wants to be a free agent for the first time in his career. So that's what to watch during the waiver period. That window will open once he's officially released, presumably at 4 p.m. Eastern today. Teams will have the ability to make their waiver claims, and then we just have to wait and see what the results are. All it takes is one team. One team claims him, he goes to that team whether he wants to or not.
And how does it start with the pecking order of the Lions are on the clock for Odell Beckham, correct?
That's right. There's an order that gets updated every week during the regular season. After the third week is when it starts to change. It's locked in going into the season for the first 3 weeks. After week 3, every week it's updated. The Lions, as the only winless team, have dibs. And then you'd have the Texans and the Dolphins. And whoever loses that game this weekend, assuming the waiver period doesn't close before Sunday, that team would have second dibs, and so on until we get down to the best teams. That's how it goes. And you don't know what other teams have done. Everybody either says yes or no, puts in a claim, and then the league sorts it all out. You could have, in theory, 30 teams make a claim for him on waivers, but the team with the highest priority is the one who gets him.
Okay, more likely that he clears waivers or that he's picked up by a team?
Got to see the contract. Got to see how they have negotiated it. I would like to think his agent insisted on a structure that will make it more likely that he's not claimed on waivers. And let me give you a quick example without getting too far into the weeds. Browns want to reduce his salary, want to pay him less. Okay, fine. Well, let's put in the contract a clause that he gets $500,000 per game when he's on the active roster, per game roster bonus, an enormous amount. That would scare a team off from claiming him on waivers, because that automatically becomes part of what they owe him if they take him. Browns don't have to pay it, but if you take him, you have to pay it. Something like that would be advisable if the goal is to help him clear waivers.
Who should pick him up?
Well, look, I think the Packers should. I think the Chiefs should. The Chiefs have been struggling to find someone who can step in and supplement Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. There are some high-end contenders out there that should want him. The names that have bubbled up so far, though, I'm told, Seahawks, 49ers, and Saints. The Saints already were talking to the Browns about a trade. They couldn't work it out. I think the Saints would be very interested in adding him to the mix. My understanding is he'd like to play for the Seahawks. And if those are the 3 teams that are most intent in pursuing him, Seahawks have the best quarterback in Russell Wilson once he's healthy, so it would make sense. But yeah, there are plenty of teams that I think should want to see what he can do. The question is, nobody really knows what he can do. Yeah, he's been open a lot this year, but are defenses really paying attention to him the way they used to? I don't think so.
What if Baker Mayfield is the issue?
Well, if he is, the Browns have chosen Baker Mayfield over Odell Beckham Jr. And Dan, when they did the trade out of the blue, March of 2019, my first reaction was Cleveland is a town that's not big enough for both Baker Mayfield and OBJ. And I remember when the offseason program started in April of that year, and everyone was there for the first day. They did the press conference with OBJ and Mayfield and Jarvis Landry, who's been close with Beckham dating back to their days at LSU. And then Mayfield has to be there as the quarterback after OBJ just walks out the door and disappears for the offseason program. That's your opportunity to build chemistry, to get to know a guy, and OBJ's nowhere to be seen. I think that threw a wrench into it early on. The pressure to constantly get the ball to OBJ, I think Mayfield resented that. He's the quarterback. He makes the decision as to who's open and where the ball goes. And I just don't think it ever really got them on the same page.
He's Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host, the Aaron Rodgers situation. How complicit is the team in this situation? Was there a cover-up? Is Aaron Rodgers going to be suspended, maybe fined? Go ahead. Pick one of those questions.
Literally, there was no cover up because he repeatedly did press conferences in the facility without his face covered. And this is what's strange about the COVID protocols, Dan. And a lot of teams are watching this because the league has a history of being selective in its enforcement of rules. Last year, handful of teams got hammered for coaches not properly wearing masks, when a lot more coaches than the ones who got hammered weren't wearing masks. So there's teams out there that repeatedly land on the NFL's radar screen, like the Saints and the Patriots, who are wondering, what are they going to do to the Packers here, right? What do the emails look like between Jeff Pash and Mark Murphy, the CEO of the Packers? How friendly are they? Is he going to look the other way? Has he been looking the other way? And there's no denying it. When it's in plain sight, he's at press conferences. They know he's not vaccinated, and there isn't a mask on his face. Preseason games, he was on the sideline, not in uniform, no mask. I read the protocol as being very clear. Only active players are exempt from wearing a mask during a preseason game if they're not vaccinated. And the league's already twisting itself into a pretzel to excuse it because they let it happen. That's the real question here. They rely on the teams to enforce the COVID protocol, but then the league, they can see the same press conferences we see. Why wasn't the league saying to the Packers, are you fining this guy $15,000 a pop for not complying? Because he clearly, when in the public eye, was going to keep the masks away because he wanted to perpetrate the ruse that he was actually vaccinated. And yeah, were the Packers enforcing the protocol, and was the league asleep at the switch? Because it looks like both were true.
Well, it feels like the Packers and Rodgers were collectively winking at this.
That's right.
We're not going to tell, and don't worry. And nobody wants to upset. In particular, the Packers don't want to upset him. They need to fall on the sword here.
The delicate genius who decided 72 hours before the start of training camp that he wasn't going to retire. You think they're going to antagonize him? Or do you think they're going to look the other way if they can? And you know what? This is one of those where you do the analysis in advance. This is the old saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Let's just keep our mouths shut about this. And if it ever hits the fan, we'll write the check. We'll deal with it then. But we don't want to undermine our very tenuous relationship with a guy that we are trying to make feel good about us. What better way to make him feel good about it than to not hassle him every day about wearing a mask, especially when he's in the public eye and he wants to be able to advance the false narrative that he's actually vaccinated. So doesn't surprise me at all. And that's why the league should be in charge of this. Somebody said to me yesterday, one of the teams said, the teams aren't expected to fine the coach when the coach goes to a press conference and rips the officiating. The league does it. Yeah. Why isn't the league the one that's intervening and disciplining a player when he fails to comply with the COVID protocol?
What did you have yesterday that you posted about Rodgers' reaction? Was he livid, or what was the
furious?
Furious. Now, is he furious because? Well, tell me why is he furious?
Well, he's furious that it got out that he's not vaccinated. And, Dan, this has been an issue for years.
But didn't it have to get out, Mike, if he's on the COVID list that people are going to go, are you vaccinated?
Well, if he's on the COVID list because of a positive, that doesn't necessarily show that he's not vaccinated. If you're on the COVID list because of a close contact, then you're definitely not vaccinated, because if you are, you're not knocked out for 5 days as a close contact. But if you're positive, it doesn't matter whether you're vaccinated or not. And when you throw on top of it that it was the NFL's media conglomerate that reported that he isn't vaccinated, and the league is NFL media, and NFL media is the league, I'm trying to anticipate what his next appearance with Pat McAfee is going to sound like, what his next press conference with a mask on, I assume, is going to sound like. And he's going to be looking for somebody to blame. Look, the book's out on this guy. I'm sorry, one of the great quarterbacks of all time, but we know how he is. He wants to blame somebody. And I could see him fashioning an argument that he had the right to lie to all of us about being vaccinated. He had the right to choose to keep that secret, and he shouldn't have been outed by the league.
Wow. I
can't wait. Must see TV. Get your popcorn the next time he talks, Dan.
Jordan Love, do you want him to play great or bad for the story?
Oh, I think the story is better if he plays incredibly well, isn't it? that makes it more likely the Packers move on from Aaron Rodgers after the season.
But if he doesn't play well, and Rodgers is likely to move on, and Jordan Love is not your future, that could be awkward.
Well, then that proves his point from all along. Why in the world did you trade up in round 1 to draft a quarterback when we had other more immediate needs that would have maybe helped us win the Super Bowl last year? Hey, I don't rule out, I've learned through 20 years of doing this, you have to be ready for everything. And the thing that you aren't ready for is the thing that will happen. We haven't heard a word from Aaron Rodgers in the 2 days since this hit the fan. Not a peep, not a tweet, not a word, not a thing, not a statement, nothing. What if this is the thing that causes him to say, I've had enough of this crap. I've had enough of dealing with this league. I've had enough of dealing with this team. I've had enough of dealing with this game. I'm out. I'm done. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but wouldn't that be amazing if that's what he decides to do? Just walks away middle of the season because he's pissed off that he got outed for being unvaccinated. Again, very small chance of it happening, but if you don't account for it, that's when it happens. Maybe I shouldn't have said it. Maybe I don't say it, it happens. But I've got everything's on the table for me on this, Dan. I can't wait to hear what he has to say.
Would you put him in front of the media?
Well, he has to be. I mean, he has to be. And now, should he speak now? I just feel like, and Peter King said this earlier today on PFT Live, the silence is deafening. And what happens is when you choose not to speak in the aftermath of something like this, you allow everyone else to create the narrative. Yeah. And the narrative is he's a big fat liar. So if you've got an explanation, and I hope he doesn't try to parse words and say that immunized means something other than vaccinated. I mean, I've watched that clip. You've seen that clip. Are you vaccinated? Yeah, I've been immunized, and I'm not going to judge my teammates who aren't vaccinated. I mean, he's telling the world he's vaccinated by saying it that way. And if he tries to navigate the words, that's not going to help him. I don't know. And I'm ready to have an open mind, whatever his explanation is. But the longer he waits, the harder it's going to be to turn everything around.
Have a great weekend, Mike.
Thanks, Dan.
And congrats on 20 years, Pro Football Talk and Pro Football Talk Live. You can see it on Peacock preceding our show. A couple of phone calls in here. Florio's all fired up there. I like that. He wants answers. Let's get answers.